Hello, welcome back to another video in my desk series where you may have noticed that this time I'm shooting at night and I've got a much needed haircut. So continuing with the theme on these desk series videos, which was totally by accident, where I'm kind of talking about how we as photographers, videographers tend to overthink a lot. And my first video was why I took some break from being creative because I was a little bit overwhelmed and just overthinking everything that I was doing. The second one in this series was part of, are we expecting too much out of our gear? Because when we see a new camera that comes out with 32-bit float audio, we kind of just expect every other camera that comes out after that to have it too. And if it doesn't, we're kind of like, when the reality of it is we've been shooting videos for a long time with 24-bit audio and we've been perfectly fine, so we tend to overthink whether we need new stuff or not. Anyway, this one I'm going to be talking about color grading, because in the communities I'm a part of, I see a lot of overthinking on that too, and I have overthought and lost many hours to color grading, and I'm going to explain in this video why you really shouldn't overthink it, because it doesn't really matter as much as we're led to believe. So if you're watching this video, you're probably like me, someone who's an aspiring photographer and video creator and wants to be a YouTube personality and spend a large amount of time watching their favorite YouTube personalities and wondering how they got their look. And we probably have started shooting in log, maybe we bought their LUTs, maybe we were disappointed with their LUTs and then decided, hey, I'm a creative guy, why shouldn't I figure out how to do this on my own, and maybe I can make money selling LUTs and things like that as well. Then we get into this endless rabbit hole of color theory, color science, color space, and we start learning about colors that we didn't even know existed, and what's available to monitors and gamuts and all this stuff. And then we spend hours setting up our editor and editing our footage to find the perfect colors, only to realize that when we export it and go into our living room and watch it, that it doesn't quite look the same as way we expected. So my analytics show that most of you probably get bored and leave the video by now. So before you go, let me tell you the meat of this discussion. Okay, so the main thing to know is that you will have zero control over your audience's devices and their device or viewing preferences. Some people might be watching on an OLED, some people might be watching on a regular LED screen, because the way it's lit will determine how they see the image, as well as their personal preferences like contrast, saturation, etc. So like really back in the day when you wanted to buy a new TV, you went to an electronics store like Best Buy, you looked at a wall of TVs, you found which one was the best picture for you, and then maybe you bought it, maybe you didn't, but we were thinking about what we liked, what our personal color preferences were. We weren't really thinking about how the directors and cinematographers of the movies that we're going to watch on the said TV intended us to view it. And now that we're like creating videos for YouTube, the tables have turned, and it's really easy to get frustrated when we see the colors on a different device aren't the way that we intended it. Sadly, this is something that we're just going to have to live with because we don't have the control over our audience's viewing devices. And so we really just need to make our best at making cool stuff. So now if you want to go ahead and leave the video before I get more technical, that's fine, the technical part. And before I go too far, I want to talk about color depth. Right now, 10-bit color depth is the most common. If you buy a device today, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a projector, computer monitor, whatever, it probably has a 10-bit color depth. 10-bit means that it has access to show you 1.07 billion colors. Now, if you're using an older 8-bit monitor, or you're buying one for a specific reason, 8-bit color depth can only show you 16.7 million colors. And while that's not really a big deal sometimes, if you are viewing something on an 8-bit monitor, it will appear less contrasty than if you watch the same video on a 10-bit monitor. Just one other thing that we don't have control over, but will make a big difference in the video that we're trying to create. It's important to know what color depth your device is that you're editing on, so that you're going to know how it's perceived by other people. The other thing that we need to talk about is color space. So here's a list of the common color spaces here. And you can see how the larger the triangle is, the more access it has to a larger color space. Now, all of these are 10-bit, but some of them just have more colors than others. And that can be a little bit confusing because honestly, at the time of this recording, if you look at this diagram here where you see Rec 2020, just know that Rec 2020 was actually decided upon to be a standard for 4K UHD HDR viewing, and at the current recording there is no monitor, TV, or tablet available that can actually show you the entirety of the Rec 2020 color gamut. So I'm saying that because it's important. You don't make the same mistake I did. When I realized that, I thought, oh, 4K UHD is pretty much going to be the standard here in a few years, and I want to be in the same color space that most people are going to be viewing content on. That is a mistake because most monitors aren't going to have the entirety of Rec 2020. So if you try to calibrate your monitor for Rec 2020, or you tell your editor to work in a Rec 2020 color space, your colors are definitely not going to look the same on a different device than the one that you're editing on. So don't make the same mistake I did. Stick with the smaller color space. It's important to stick with the smaller color space because even the larger ones can still view the smaller color space within. And that is really the only control you're going to be able to have on color consistency across viewing devices. If you go larger, there's a high possibility that it's not going to look the same or could be drastically different. So I suggest working in Rec 709, which is what I usually work in, to make sure that most of the colors are kind of consistent across all of the devices, whether they're using a larger color space or a smaller one, or it could be an older monitor. At least you're going to have some consistency across most of the devices. I want to talk a little bit more about monitors just to add to your frustrations. Most monitors, like mine, which are Asus ProArt 10-bit displays, have their own settings, and I can go into the menu of the on-screen display of my monitor, and I'll show you that here in a second, and there are presets within the monitor for certain color spaces. Now Asus says in order to properly view that color space, then you need to actually download their color profiles for your computer, install them, so that way your video card sends the proper signals to the monitor. And if that's not confusing, I don't know what is, because not every monitor is that way. Some of them don't have color profiles and some of them don't have presets, so you're going to get one or the other. I personally have my monitor set to what they call native, which means it will try its best to show you the colors that are sent from your computer. I'm using a Mac, so my colors are set for display P3. Now while my colors are set to see display P3, I edit in my editor in Rec 709, and I will show you my DaVinci Resolve editor settings here in a minute, and I will try to explain just, roundabout how I edit in Rec 709. If you're looking for some monitors to do editing on, might I suggest that you don't overthink that as well, because even these nice Asus ProArt monitors come with this little certificate. Well, just take my word for it. There's glare on it, but they come with this little certificate that shows that an institute called Kalman has verified the colors. Now, I'm not sure how accurate that actually is, because surely they can't verify the colors on every single monitor that crosses the assembly line, probably a subsample of it. And I can personally attest to that because my left monitor appears to be a little bit warmer and a little bit more green than my right monitor, which appears to be a little bit cooler and a little bit more pink. Now there is a way around this by using these things, which are hardware color calibrators that will create a custom color profile for your computer to display the right colors. Will I do this? Probably, but that's just because the inconsistencies between the two monitors kind of bothers me, and it doesn't have any effect on whether or not you see the correct colors on your monitor, because I can't have any control over what you're using to watch this video. But for me personally, it's bothersome to see an image on this side and then take the image over here and it appear slightly different. So I'm going to rent a calibrator and see if it works, and if it doesn't, then I'm just going to have to live with that fact. Point being is that even if you select a really nice ProArt monitor or an Apple display or something like that, you're still going to get some color inconsistency whether you want it or not. You may not always get it, but it still is a possibility. I'm going to show you a screenshot of the display settings for my DaVinci Resolve profile, and you can see here that I have a checkbox selected to use 10-bit color. That is because I have 10-bit color monitors. If you don't have one, if you have an 8-bit color monitor, you don't want to check this box. Now I have a box checked here for Mac colors. That is because Apple has their own display P3 color space that's a little bit different than the rest of the world, so you need to be seeing Mac colors if you want the colors to be accurate on other devices, and that's a whole nother video in of itself. There's plenty. If you look up DaVinci Resolve color wash for Mac, then you'll see plenty of videos explaining it better than I can. Now this button here I have checked because I want to tag all Rec 709 scene as Rec 709A. That is because A means Apple, and I will be working in the Rec 709 Apple space, so that way I'm not seeing washed out colors. Come to the project settings here, I have it DaVinci YRGB. That's pretty standard for anyone who uses DaVinci. It's a pretty wide color space, and it allows you to use some more advanced features like color space transform. If you're using two cameras that are set to different settings, you can use this to your advantage to make sure that they are displaying the same footage on your timeline, or the same colors on your timeline, and then you're able to export it with a consistent color across, regardless of whether you shot it on a Sony or a Canon or a Fuji or whatever. So it's important to use that if you're going to be using that feature. If not, just leave it there, it's going to be fine. Now, for my timeline, I have it set to Rec 709, again, because that's going to give me the best color consistency across multiple devices as I can, and I have it set to be Rec 709A because I'm using an Apple product and I want to see the proper Rec 709 colors. If you don't select this, you are going to see what you think is Rec 709, but then when you play it back on any Apple device, it's going to look very washed out because it's not using the Rec 709 Apple colors, which is again a whole other video in itself. But just trust me, if you're on Apple, you want to have this checked as Rec 709A. That's really it. From here on out, I will just edit my footage the way I see fit, the way I like it, and then before I export it, what I will do is I'll kind of go through some of the clips that may be darker or lighter or whatever. I'll select a few random clips, and then I will take the colors. I will look at the saturation and I'll turn it up maybe 25% and then down 25% from what I had it saved as. I will also do the same thing for the contrast settings and maybe the color temperature settings and the tint, just to make sure that if somebody might be viewing with any of those options on or off, if I'm comfortable with the way it looks slightly, then I will just go back to the settings that I had the project saved as and export it and upload it. And then from there on, you just have to hope your video does well regardless of what device it's being used on, because from this point on you have no control. The only control you have is viewing the colors that you see on the screen that you edited on. From there on out, unless somebody has the exact same setup as you, it's going to look a little bit different. So that's the point of the video. Don't overthink this too much because it's not going to look the same. And don't let it discourage you. Just do what you do. Be as creative as you want with the colors and make cool stuff and then send it out for the world to see. Alright, so that's it for this desk series. I apologize to any Hollywood colorists that I may have offended by saying use Rec 709, because I know your job is tough and you're working in much larger color spaces and you have a much more technical explanation for colors than I do, but this video is made specifically for people like me that have less than 1,000 subscribers and are trying their best to make their videos look good. Anyway, with that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video later.